Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to my autobiography, Perils of an Interesting Life. This is Chapter 4, and we are talking about the church from hell. So, where we left off was with my aunt peeling out and driving away from the scene of the crime, where my cousin had jumped out of the car and produced some retribution onto one of the toadies of the local bully that had just beaten me within an inch of my life, this group of boys. And when I got back to school the next day after that incident, the word in school was other people had to fight my battles for me. And, you know, although you may think you're hearing a small tale of childhood, you know, something funny, a Sandlot story, know that this story, unlike some other funny stories of kids and their squabbles, actually changed the course of people's lives from one side to the other. That there's some mayhem that erupts from this conflict between me and my family and almost this entire town. So, parts of my interesting life. And this town was an interesting town. LeGrand is an interesting town, and it's probably changed, so much of America has. And some of these boys I'm talking about may be men now living right there in that same valley. But they'd never seen people like us before. I was different from these other boys. They just hadn't figured it out yet. They rejected me because they didn't know me, or they didn't like me because they didn't know me. But that's just it. They didn't know me. They didn't know who they were messing with, and they certainly didn't know my family. And, you know, when you try to warn people, you know, because when we had some of those confrontations earlier when I first got there with his toadies, you know, with Chachi's toadies, I tried to tell them, you know, look, I don't want any trouble. You don't understand. I want to be your friend because you don't want me as an enemy. You really don't. And they just thought it was bragging. It's one of the problems about being dangerous and being part of a dangerous family is that when you warn people, it just sounds like bragging. It just sounds like you're trying to, I don't know. They just blow you off. They don't take you seriously. Eventually, I would stop that tactic completely and even stop trying to warn people. And basically, they would find out when they got what they had coming to them. You know, I would always take the high road until I didn't, you know, until it was my turn. Flip the script, know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't. But anyway, yeah, there was a lot of mayhem that was born out of this incident. So I go back to school with the plan in place that I had before my cousin and my aunt intervened. Because I had a plan. When I was laid up for a week nursing all of my bumps and bruises, I came up with a plan that I could whip any one of those boys one-on-one. I just couldn't whoop them all at once. So I had to come up with a plan to isolate them, catch them when they weren't with the rest of the group, and deal with them each one by one. And I figured I'd let the toady Rod I'd let him off the hook since my cousin did some work on him already. And so I set about that next week, one a day, for 4 days in a row. I found a way to isolate these boys, and then I worked them over. I gave them pretty much about what my cousin gave that boy on the street corner. And I got away with it. I figured out ways to do it. Never tangle with a person with a high IQ. They will find ways to defeat you that you can't even imagine. I mean, give you one example. First of all, they wouldn't leave me alone. As soon as I got back to school, it was all 5 of them on me all the time. You know, cornering me, roughing me up, threatening me, and just me telling them all, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you when you're by yourself. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. And they would just laugh and taunt me and rough me up, you know, push me down, drag me around, you know, almost fight me, never get close enough for me to really lay into them without somebody circling around, and just play, but intimidation. If you've been there, you've been bullied, you know what I mean. And one day they had my hat and they were throwing it around. They waited till the bell rang for school. And the thing is, I was avoiding them. I was avoiding them till I could catch them on my terms. So I was avoiding these opportunities, and I was sticking pretty close to the teachers. And the bell rang at the end of one of these classes, and the teacher left the room along with all the other students. But they impeded the doorway and wouldn't let me out. and the teacher went first. The teacher was just out of there, like she had to be someplace. And so they had me trapped in this room, and they messed with me, and they had my hat until they got bored. And then they decided they'd had enough, and they had to go home themselves or go on to the next class. I don't know where we were in the day. I just know, and I remember this very clearly, that my thought was, when they walk out, I'm going to nab the end guy, the end duck on the end, the last guy out the door, and I'm going to throw the bolt, because there was a bolt on that door. I know, because they just locked me in there with it. So when they went to leave, my plan was to throw the bolt and grab that last guy and work him over. And there was a little window in the door, and I knew they could all watch me beat his, whoop him in front of them without them being able to intervene, like a terrarium. So when the last guy went out, I used a little move that I learned from the old Marine, and I walked up behind the last guy as he was leaving, and I just reached up behind him, and I took these 2 fingers, and I put him in this little hollow spot right here, that one right there, and I dug for China. And of course, he went to his knees and cried for his mommy, like they always do when you do that to people. If you don't have super strong muscles in here, there's a hollow spot there that you can almost reach down and touch somebody's lung. And it's definitely extremely painful because there's a nerve under there. So I did this to this guy, put him on the ground, and then I kicked him and beat him on the ground like those other boys had done me, while they watched and beat on the door and tried to get through the security fire door with the deadbolt thrown, all looking through this little rectangular window trying to get at me. Gives you an example. Caught another kid the next day after school. He tried to slip out the back and go a sneaky way, but I had some of my friends watching, and they tipped me off to what block he was going, and I caught him on a sidewalk in front of some little granny lady's house, and we threw down there. He didn't last 2 punches before I was dragging him around by his heels, slapping him in his face, trying to wake him up. So this went on throughout the week. At the end of the week, the only one left I hadn't gotten to was the toady, Rod, who my cousin had already worked over, and I was going to give him a pass. And to give you an idea of how serious this was to me, ever since I came back to school, unbeknownst to my family or anybody at school or any friend or even my cousin and my aunt, nobody knew this. But I had a switchblade in my pocket. I had found it on the streets of Salem, visiting my family when I was a kid on a bicycle, and I never told anybody about it. And I found it in a pool of blood behind a bar. And I took that, it was broad daylight, it was just laying there in a puddle of blood. And this was about a year or two before, back in Salem. And I cleaned that sucker up and stuck it in my boot. And I never told a soul I had it. And that whole week, I carried it. I had it on me because I decided if they were going to all jump me, I was going to stick 2 or 3 of them and go to jail if I had to, because I was not going to let them work me over like that again. And, of course, I wasn't even thinking about trying to get any help from the school. The school was obviously on their side. I wonder if that teacher, honestly, this just dawned on me as I'm telling you this story. I wonder, when that teacher got up and left the room, if she didn't know they were going to work me over. Did she leave so they could hold me in that classroom and work me over and rough me up? Well, I made that one boy pay for it, I promise you. Yeah, he was knocked out and groggy. I remember running into him later in the day. I was watching him from a distance, and he was just not right. I mean, I jacked him up. I guess he recovered from whatever happened to him when I contacted that nerve. But at any rate, it's the final day, and it's after school, and everybody figures that it's Rod's turn, that I'm coming for him. So I'd already decided that I was done. When I got that last boy, the 4th boy, when I got Chachi, I was done. And it was Chachi. I followed around and got on a street corner and got in front of that old lady's house. I worked him over. He had a glass jaw, man. I could knock him down with just one punch. just tap him and he was down. So that was easy. But I was going to let Rod go. Rod was a big old boy. I kind of needed my cousin, I felt like, to take care of him, because if me and him fought, it was going to be, we were pretty equal. And I wondered if I could take him. And so he caught me after school, and when everyone thinks you're coming for me, and I've had enough. You whooped the other 4 of my friends, and I'm the only one left from that day, so I'm not running anymore, and I'm tired of it, and I'm ready to fight you. And I was like, okay, this is the thing that I was hoping wouldn't happen. The biggest kid in school. Rod was the biggest kid in school. And so I remember throwing I think I had a book bag down, or my books down, and I reached in my back pocket of my blue jean, and I took that knife out with the intention, it was folded, it wasn't open, with the intention of flinging it far distance off, so that I wouldn't be tempted to just go crazy on him. Like, I didn't want to go, I won't use my family's name, that side of my family. I didn't want to go all Irish traveler on him and just give him 14 in the neck, so I chunked it, and I was ready to fight this guy fair and square. But when that knife came out, he saw it. And of course the news was I pulled a knife on him, which I did not. I was going to throw it, but before I could even throw it, he was like, "I'm not messing around with no guy with a knife!" And he runs away screaming. I think this story has probably been told from their perspective. This was a big deal. It was a big deal, and they tried to get me for carrying a weapon, but they called my parents. But I just went home. I lived next door. I stashed the knife. I did admit to the old man that I had it, so I had to give the old Marine the knife, But we just stuck to our story that there was no knife involved. No one pulled a knife. There wasn't a knife. I'm sorry that my dad would lie to him, but we were dealing with some treacherous people that were trying to destroy the victim. I mean, when I came back to school, even before I started whooping these boys, they were trying still to destroy me and make this all about me and all my fault. My father, that whole week I was off, was fighting with the school district and the powers that be in that town. And at any rate, time passed. I pretty much had to fight different members of that bully squad off and on all through the winter. We had a big mountain of snow because it snowed there in November and it didn't go away until May. It just kept snowing until May, and it does that in La Grande, and especially that winter was the worst in recorded history, in recent history. It's still an infamous winter. And they piled up all the snow from the playground, same playground where I got whooped on. And we would play King of the Mountain. And just, my fighting skills, my martial arts skills, my size, my genes, I don't know, the intellect, I don't know what it was, but you couldn't get me off that mountain. And after the third kid who tried to take me off that mountain along about February or March, that had to be taken to the hospital and have his head checked, because, I'm king of the mountain, we're playing the game. If you come for me and I throw you 10 feet and you land on your head and split your head open, that's on you. Or maybe not. I don't know. It was a different world. Don't judge. But these were really the same boys and their friends versus my friends. That it was almost like a civil war in the school around me and Chachi for that whole winter. And but long about spring, when the ice started to melt, they by the way, because of the kids getting hurt on King of the Mountain, mainly because of me, they bulldozed that snow off and had it carted away. So we lost our mountain. But when the snow started to melt in the spring, my cousin was still really bothered about all of it. About that school. About that teacher who watched me get whipped. I guess now that I realize it, he probably saw it too, that other teacher who left me alone in that classroom with those boys later, as I was still recovering from being beaten black and blue by them. And he was really bothered by it. And he was a bit of an outlaw. So my cousin and 3 or 4 of his buddies broke into the school one day in May, and they trashed it. They broke out all the glass, they tore out all the desks, they busted up all the equipment, they spray painted liars and cheats and, the C word and FU all up and down the hallways. And it was the worst. This may end up, this story could actually be found probably in a newspaper article. It was a big deal. I think the number was $15,000 in damages. And so my old man had to play the preacher card and go to bat for my cousin, because they were going to send him off at the age of 14 to reform school in the valley. And so my dad cut a deal with them that he said that he told them that he would be personally responsible for my cousin, and that they could put him basically under the old Marine's control, and that he would give his word that nothing more would happen, that he would ensure that this young man would not do anything like that in the future, and that they were going to have, and the family plan was, we're going to have the old Marine intervene, and he's going to take my cousin. And me and my cousin were like brothers, so I was excited about it. He was excited about it. You're going to come live with me. You're going to live with me, and my dad's going to straighten you out. So that's what it was. The old Marine was going to straighten him out. And they made the deal with it, and he avoided reform school really just because of the old Marine's bluff. You know, I think the IQ comes from the old Marine. Smart guy. He was never tested. I don't know. I played chess against him. I could win eventually. I won eventually. It took many years to learn him. But at any rate, so on the first day of the new arrangement, my cousin's coming to live with me. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped up. I got my brother, you know, we're going to be living together. And I know he's going to do fine because I'm going to help him, and we're going to get him straightened out so he doesn't, you know, go and like do crazy stuff like that anymore. And but then my dad, and I can't remember, I wore continual bruises on my back my entire life. I was under strict orders to never take my shirt off. One time I almost got taken away from my parents and my dad jailed because I'd had enough of trying to figure out a way to be on the shirts team when we played shirts and skins, and I finally got tired of it, and I ended up taking my shirt off, and they saw the black and blue bruises on my back from the beatings that I took on a daily basis. And the old Marine almost went to prison. This happened earlier. So I knew never to take my shirt off. I got a serious whipping for having taken my shirt off and almost costing him the whole ball game. And that was in the previous town we just moved from. But so I always maintained this bevy of bruises on my back on a daily basis. They were just there. I mean, I didn't see them. I made a point of not looking in the mirror at them. They were back there. And I knew not to take my shirt off. And so on the first day of the new arrangement with my cousin to come live with us, he's got his bags. He shows up at the church basement, and we're going to all live in the church basement together, and my daddy, the preacher, is going to straighten him out. And my dad sits down, and he goes, "All right, boy, come here." And he's talking to my cousin. And he goes, "I want you to understand, this house is not like your house. That I will tolerate no malarkey. There will be no funny business. There will be no rebellion. There will be no sassing, no back talk. That you're going to be a Marine. You're going to be an upstanding Marine. You're going to be a fine Marine, or else." And my cousin, if nothing else, I mean, he was just born with too big of, you know, he just had too much. He didn't take crap from nobody, even the old Marine. I couldn't believe to watch him stand up to him, but he goes, "Really? Or else? Or else what?" And my dad says, "Come here to me." He goes, "Take off your shirt." So I'm facing both of my, pull my shirt off. And he goes, "Let me show you what happens to people who question me. Let me show you how things are going to be around here for you if you don't toe the line." Son, turn around. And I turned around, and my cousin, who was around me all the time, but I never took my shirt off, ever, ever, ever. I swam in it. He'd never seen it. Even though we were like brothers and we were around each other all the time, he had no idea I was getting whipped every day like that. He had no clue. And when he saw my back and put two and two together, and the old man looked at him and went, "You can expect to be treated like this if you live here. And, you know, this is how it's going to be, so you better straighten up and fly right. You don't have any choice. The game is over. It's time to be a man now." Hang on, I got an itchy nose. I'm going to sneeze. So what do you think my cousin did? What do you think he did? I'll tell you what he did. He turned pale white. He turned around. He grabbed his one suitcase, and he split up the stairs, out the front door of the church. I heard his feet running down the street, and I didn't see him again. I did not see my cousin again for about a year and a half, about a year and a half, until I saw him again. I saw him again right before he went to prison for his first long stint, because you know, there was no straightening him out. It took 17 years in the Oregon State Penitentiary to straighten my cousin out. And he's still crazy as a bed bug, but he knows where the line is, and he doesn't cross it so willingly anymore because he doesn't want to go back there. And actually, I think he's turned out to be a fine man despite it all. But yeah, he's definitely what one would consider a criminal. But yeah, that was kind of the story in that town. And why this is titled The Church from Hell, I haven't even gotten to this. And I guess maybe I mistitled this one because I'm already 19 minutes in. When I'm telling my life story, it just, time flies by. So I'm probably going to end this video, and I apologize for the false title at the front. The next one is going to be about the church from hell, because that church and that church basement and that church where I learned to play the piano, the church where all this is going on, ended in one of the most destructive and demonic explosions that I've ever seen in a church. It's the biggest church drama to date ever, and you won't believe that story when I tell it to you in episode 5. All right. Thanks, and thanks for watching my autobiography.